Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone to this webinar where we will be exploring an effective framework for teaching adult EAL literacy. I have prepared quite a bit of content for you, but like Elke said, there will be a few opportunities for you to share your teaching suggestions and some information about useful resources, I hope. If we can tap into our collective knowledge and experience, I think everybody should come away from this session with at least a few items of info that will help us this fall. So my presentation will cover how good readers make sense of print, teaching literacy students how to use MS&V. The MS&V will be covered in the first section, and my emergency remote teaching routine, assessments, resources, and the summary. I'd like to start with a few slides of photos of what my L1 students and foundation students can do. So both my foundation students and the one literacy students can learn to read books with understanding and natural phrasing. The L1 students can read at least 150 high frequency words quite easily, and these words come from the content of the course, the personally relevant language for them, and words that they're seeing often and need to know how to read. My L1 students can also write from memory. They can write sentences and words. In this case, this woman from Eritrea had never held a pencil before she came to my class, in a foundations class, and had no listening and speaking in English. And on this day earlier this year in February, she wrote 43 words from memory. This woman from Iraq also had no listening and speaking when she came to my foundations course, and she'd never held a pencil. On this day, she wrote 58 words from memory. So I learned a lot about teaching literacy on my own and through countless Pro-D opportunities, but I finally became as effective a teacher, a literacy teacher, as I had wanted to be when I did the 2-year training on Dr. Mari Clay's theory and methodology for teaching struggling readers to develop a complex reading and writing processing system built on what learners can do. Mari Clay was a child psychologist, an educator, and a researcher. And today I want to share with you a framework for teaching literacy based on the work of Dr. Mari Clay. So the first section we're going to look at is how readers make sense of print. And this next section will involve a little interactive work with the chat box. So open up your chat box, and you can also unmute your microphones and try reading this Amharic out loud. So it's going to sound a bit crazy with a whole bunch of people speaking at once, but on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, well,
that's probably, I don't know.
Yeah, probably we don't know what that is.
So how about Italian? For those of you who don't speak Italian, let's just see how we do at reading Italian. So on the count of 3, everybody, 1, 2, 3, go.
In seguito
popoli qui evoluti ovvero adesso se allevamento il lattiato alimento rogeraro nei
invernali.
Okay, wow. Well, you did way better with the Italian than the Amharic. So just in the chat box, if you want to put in a few words of why that was easier. How were you able to read the Italian? I can't really see. Same alphabet, yeah. You know the alphabet, you know the letters. It's the Roman alphabet, right? Yeah, good. Okay, so yes, With the Italian, you know how to use the visual information, the marks on the page, the details of the text. And Marie Clay, when she talks about visual information, she's not talking about visuals in terms of pictures, images, layout. She's talking about the details of the text, letters, words, spaces, punctuation. So yeah, we know how to decode this visual information. And sometimes our students are really great at this as well, but as with me, when I was reading this Italian, they have no idea what they're actually reading. So sometimes our students sound like they know how to read, but they just have great decoding skills. They know how to use visual information, but they really don't. They really are not reading because reading is getting the intended meaning from the text. Okay, so visual information is one of the key sources of information that good readers use when reading. How about another source of information? Again, you can keep your mics on and everybody start to read and fill in the blanks on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go.
This was on November 2nd,
November
2000.
2nd,
In a refugee
at
camp in
refugee
Ghana.
camp in Ghana.
In Ghana.
His parents were Liberian,
Liberian,
but
but
he had to leave
Liberia
had
Liberia
to leave
of
Liberia
the Civil
because
War.
of the Civil
Civil
War.
War.
It
It
was not
was,
safe.
it was not safe, yeah.
Wow, okay, so everybody filled in the same words. How were you able to do that? If you want to put a few words in the chat box. English grammar, context clues, yeah. Knowledge of our grammar, context, familiar with syntax, right. Yes, okay, good. So you know how to use structure. You have an awareness of correct English structure and what sounds right. Now, when you filled in those blanks, were you thinking specifically of the grammar rules that applied in each case, in each blank, or were you just going by what sounds right?
Yes.
Were you thinking of the grammar, yes or no?
No.
Sounds right. Yeah, no, not the grammar. Right, right. So this has implications for our teaching, right? Because we really, really need students to develop an awareness of what sounds right so that it's automatic and they can predict words while reading. So here's another thing to think about. How about CEF or CLB foundation students? Can they be expected to use correct structure? Can your foundation students say, hello, how are you? Can they say, my name is so-and-so? Can they say, today's Tuesday, September 8th, or Wednesday, September 9th, 2020? My students definitely can, yeah. So even foundation students can be expected to learn correct structure. It's not very sophisticated structure yet, but they're certainly able to learn to understand and speak and read and write with correct structure. So those are the 2 of the 3 sources of information that good readers use while reading. Visual information, the marks on the page, structure, and awareness of what sounds right. So what's the 3rd source? So again, you can just read out loud and fill in the blank. 1, 2, 3, go.
My son will be,
Turning 6
son will be turning 6 tomorrow. So today I'm making a chocolate birthday cake.
Right, I think everybody filled in cake. And again, how were you able to do that? How did you know it was going to be cake? Context, predicting the meaning, tradition, cultural context, sociolinguistic knowledge, cultural clue, context, vocabulary, cultural context. Right. Yeah. So as you're reading this, you're perhaps developing a picture in your mind of a mom making a birthday cake and a little 6-year-old boy all excited about the cake, the presents, the party. You can picture all of the meaning that is involved in this sentence. So that's the third source of information that good readers use when making sense of print, an understanding of the text from pictures, context, and background knowledge. But our literacy students will not necessarily be able to make sense of print and form that meaning in their minds without a picture. So there's a picture here and a blank. What do you think this blank is?
Female.
Girl.
Yeah, could be. Could be pretty much anything because you don't have very much information here. How about if we give you some meaning? So now, what do you think that word could be?
Cute.
Drinking.
Drinking.
Right. So of all of the many thousands of words of the English language, that picture has allowed you to narrow it right down to only a few, maybe cute, maybe drinking, maybe thirsty. So you got a lot of meaning from that picture that is going to help you predict the word. How about baby is drink? Could it be baby is drink? Probably not, because you're also using your awareness of correct structure. Baby is drink does not sound right. How about if we add some visual information? Now, when you put those three sources of information together, you're going to be able to read baby is drinking. So this is a pretty simplistic example of how readers use a complex reading processing system of meaning, visual information, and structure all together to make sense of print. So good readers use a balance of meaning and understanding of the text from pictures, context, and background knowledge, an awareness of correct English structure or what sounds right, visual information, the marks on the page, letters, words, spaces, and punctuation. So that's the first section of the webinar, how good readers make sense of print. And now we're going to have an opportunity to first get into chat rooms and talk about what this looks like in the classroom. How do you teach your students to read for meaning, develop an awareness of correct English sentence structure, and use the print itself, and a balance of those three. So Elka is going to put everybody into about maybe groups of 8 or 10, Elka, and give everybody 10 minutes or so to talk about how you would teach students to use meaning, structure, and visual information. Okay, so hello everyone. Nice to chat with a few of you in the chat room. Hope you had some good discussions about using meaning, getting your students to read for meaning, getting them to have an awareness of correct sentence structure, and using the print itself. So I'm going to really quickly whip through some points on teaching meaning, structure, and visual information, but we want to be able to have time to discuss our remote learning experiences and assessments. So I'm going to go through this super quickly, but the PowerPoint will be sent to you later, so you'll be able to go through the slides and read the stuff that I skipped and look at everything more carefully. Okay, so teaching meaning to students, teaching literacy students to read for meaning. So first of all, the students can provide the meaning when they write about their own experiences. And then reading is easy. So for example, writing about your weekend. Also, teach students to look at the picture before reading the text. A lot of students think that this is cheating and they don't want to look at the picture. They just want to try to read with the text, from the text only. But they really need to be learning to use all the information that they can. And if they look carefully at the picture and start to generate that information and that language, then they'll be more prepared when they see that language in print. It'll be easier for them to read. Also, we have to teach students how to look at pictures. They don't always know how to read pictures and get all of the intended information. Another thing that helps with students focusing on meaning is after they read, ask them, close the book and ask them, well, tell me, what can you tell me about the story? Or what do you remember about the story or the email or the article? And get them to retell. Also, you can teach higher level students to look for the big idea. Maybe it needs to be inferred from the text, but retelling and talking about the big idea probably will take explicit teaching, and they'll get better at it over time. It's not an easy thing for literacy students to do. Also, tons and tons of pictures, big ones for the board, pictures for the binders, and pictures for manipulatives. And for remote teaching, I ended up making a lot of PowerPoint videos with audio so that the students could practice the language in listening, speaking, and reading as much as they needed to try to master that. I also set up a YouTube channel and made a few videos. They don't have to be very exciting. This one is only 34 seconds long, and I just sing the days of the week twice and then say goodbye. But some of them are a little more complicated. But and also add visuals to your emails to help your students with the meaning of the email. And here's a tip for adding images to emails. I opened up a Word document. Now it's about 6 or 7 pages long, and I just cut and paste all sorts of icons and pictures that I need to use in emails regularly. And then I just copy them from this document and paste them into an email as a picture. If you paste it in as a text, it'll probably show up in your students' emails as a random, unrecognizable symbol. So paste those little icons and pictures as pictures. And then when you click on the picture that you just put in your email, you'll see that it actually takes up quite a large rectangular space, and that might interfere with the formatting of your email. So click on the area of the image you just pasted, and then select the crop tool and crop the area down to the size that you want so that it won't interfere with the formatting of your email. And to reduce the size of your PowerPoint videos, compress each photo in your PowerPoint to the email or the default size. And then when you save your PowerPoint, save as, and choose export, and then choose create a video. And then instead of the higher definition settings, use just the standard 480. So those two things, compressing your pictures and selecting a lower standard resolution, will really help you to be able to reduce the size of your PowerPoint, and your students will be able to open them on their phones or their computers. Okay, literacy students, teaching them how to use structure, developing an awareness of what sounds right. They need lots and lots of exposure to listening and speaking of the target language, more so than grammar activities. If you do use grammar worksheets, make sure that they know all of the language well, rather than having them give get a grammar worksheet and then you have to explain 10 new words to them. They have to know the language well in order to be able to really understand and use and get a lot out of the grammar activity. Also, daily reading of easy, familiar books, articles, or past writing. Sometimes we think that once a student can read a book, they're finished with it. You know, we need to challenge them. We want to expand their learning. But easy, familiar books are so valuable for creating an awareness of structure, reading them again and again, and also helping them to develop reading that sounds good, reading with natural speed, natural phrasing, and correct intonation. And also when they can make their reading sound good and reading becomes easy, it develops their confidence in reading. Also, cut-up sentences allow students to work physically with sentence structures. So for foundations and even level 1 students, they sequence a sentence about the date and the weather every day, and we use it for other target language as well. In remote learning, I would give the students photos of how to create cut-up sentences, and then they would send me photos of their cut-up sentences sequenced. So how to use visual information, the marks on the page, letters, words, and spaces. We need to teach our students phonemic awareness. They need to hear and identify the individual sounds in words, which sounds really easy for us, but the sounds of English may be very different from the sounds of their language. So hearing and recognizing these sounds is not necessarily easy, let alone hearing them in order in new English words. So that's an important skill to develop. And you can work on that with different activities, you know, maybe 10, 15 minutes each class. Orthographic awareness, recognizing the visual features of a written language. So we need to teach directionality, one-to-one voice print matching so that every word they say is represented by a different word on the page. Often they'll need to put their finger in and touch each word as they read. Fast letter discrimination, printing, and seeing more than one letter at a time when copying. So they really have to become familiar with the print. And then phonics, the letter sound relationship. So the relationship between phonemic awareness and orthographic awareness. And I tend to teach my students the letter names before the letter, no, the letter sounds before the letter names. And we also have to teach our students how words work and what they should be noticing about words. And the students need to develop a bank of known words, words that are easily recognized when reading and easily written from memory. So when teaching phonics or when helping students acquire words that they can recognize easily, we need to teach them to see parts of words and to notice certain things about words, like initial and final sounds, like syllables, like seeing parts of words that they know, and spelling patterns like inflections, different endings, prefixes, suffixes, and other common spelling patterns. So if they can learn to recognize these letter clusters quickly and write them quickly and read them quickly, that will help them with their decoding. I did a little bit of this with remote learning. For example, I gave them these instructions in an email one day. Today you will write on a paper, write the 14 sentences, circle the ED. And then they would send me a photograph of their work. And in this activity, I was just getting them to really focus on the ED in each of these words, because it sounds obvious to us, but literacy students really aren't used to paying attention to the details of words. So we have to do a lot of this explicit teaching about that. Okay, so why do students need known words? Let's read the following passage and try to keep up a normal pace. You don't have to read it out loud, so you can mute your microphones, but we'll all start and read it at a normal pace. 1, 2, 3, go.
Chocolate is, of some popular stuffed types and Strovel in the world, and and foods involving.
Okay, so you should have been able to finish reading that already if you were reading it at a normal pace, but some of those words were mixed up. And so did those mixed up words affect your ability to read? Did it affect the pace of your reading? And did it affect the comprehension? So just a yes or no. Did those mix-up words affect your reading pace and your comprehension? Yes. Right. Yeah. So when our students stop reading to figure out words, comprehension and fluency are reduced. Therefore, literacy students need to acquire as many known words as possible so that they can keep up a fluent pace and keep that meaning developing as they read. So putting it all together, some of the activities we work on will involve skill building for meaning, structure, or visual information, but there will be also activities in which all of these three come together in a balanced way. So reading continuous text is obviously one of those. Students should have frequent opportunities to read new texts at their instructional level. Let the students do the work of figuring out words as they read. Don't just jump in and try to help them right away. You can prompt them with, well, look at the picture. What's the first sound? Well, can you see a part of the word that you know, or is it similar to another word you know? There are different kinds of prompts and eliciting that we can use to get them building independent strategies for reading. And eventually, when these strategies become internalized and they're having trouble, you can just say, well, what could you try? And get them to be making decisions about how they go about figuring out the text. Now, this is actually not a good picture for reading a new text, because students should be reading a new text on their own. They should not be getting help from other people. They should be trying to figure it out themselves. This is a picture of people doing familiar reading. If the text is not too difficult, the students should have success with only a little support from the teacher. So reading continuous text and opportunities for that, as you know, in the classroom, I like to try to do it every day. Sometimes I don't always fit it in. Composing and writing a message. So here the students have come up as a whole, as a class, they come up with a message, or I elicit a message, and when they've mastered it in listening and speaking, then volunteers come up and write one word at a time on the board. Sometimes there'll be known words that the student can write from memory. Sometimes I will help them hear the individual sounds and words, or help them get strategies to figure out how to write a new word. So students write from their personal experiences, and teachers help the students figure out words that they don't know how to write, maybe when they're writing about their weekend, for example, or the class composes, writes, and reads a board story. But composing messages is an example where they're going to put it all together, the meaning, the structure, and the visual information. Okay, so that was a pretty quick overview. I mean, really, all of this stuff would be a series of workshops, but this is just a framework today, so we're going through it really quickly. But if you take anything away from all that, it would be that literacy learners get meaning from pictures, videos, and their personal experiences, not necessarily from print. An awareness of correct structure comes from mastering full sentences in listening and speaking. Teach the relationships between the sounds of spoken English and its written form, so phonics. Literacy learners must acquire a large bank of high-frequency known words. So my emergency remote teaching routine. Well, for the first 3 months, it was pretty awful, mostly because I didn't have correct email addresses and phone numbers for my students, and I also needed to get email addresses and phone numbers of helpers that could help each of the students read their emails and help them with homework, and getting that information took so long. Literacy students are not tuned into the details of print, so when they sent me a photo of their email address written on a paper, and I would try to use it, it wouldn't work. So it took weeks for me to get the correct contact information for students and their helpers, and that took so much time away from checking out websites, making materials, learning new things. So it was pretty frustrating. Spent way too long at the computer every day. But eventually I did end up with some sort of a routine. I have 2 classes, a LINC one morning and a LINC one afternoon. I sent daily emails at 9 o'clock in the morning to students and their helpers. These emails involved a plan for the day, supporting documents or links to help students understand the assignments or practice the target language, a link to a digital reader, and a link to a Mystery Dog video. A Mystery Dog video is they're a series of science videos for elementary school students, but they're done really well. They're short, the visuals are great, the explanations are really nice, and the students really like them. And this was more of a family literacy and general knowledge activity. I also had Zoom lessons 2 days a week on average, and students could choose to attend a morning or an afternoon Zoom lesson. So I did 4 Zoom lessons a week, and the students attended 2. We covered the following topics. Well, at the beginning, it was email addresses and telephone numbers. That lasted a while. And in July, I did a reading assessment about reading emails. Over the course of May, June, and July, we did the calendars, and in July, they did a writing assessment where they had to draw and write a July calendar. Then, because we started chatting on Zoom a lot, as the students were coming onto Zoom, we would chit chat about, you know, what they were doing, how are their families, what did you do on the weekend, what will you do this coming weekend. And so the 18 common activities that we were using in class that they already knew generally, I decided to use that for a little bit of work with past tense and future with will. And I did 3 assessments with that topic. Then in July, we did Zoom instructions, and I did 3 assessments with that topic as well. For the fall of 2020, I will be back in the classroom, and in case things take another turn for the worst in terms of COVID, I'm going to try to get my students to learn more about using their email address and see if I can get them on Avenue, just in case we need to do more remote work. So that is my plan for remote teaching. Now, assessments. I won't read this all. You can look at it later when you get your copy of the PowerPoint. But this just outlines some things to keep in mind when creating listening, speaking, and reading and writing assessments with meaning, structure, and visual information in mind. Since students need to develop a large and growing bank of high-frequency words, I regularly do a reading assessment, a word reading assessment, where it's super, super easy. They get a copy of the list and I get a hard copy. They read each word and I check them off. If they read them quickly and easily, I give them a check mark. If they read them too slowly or they're incorrect, they get an X. And I can keep track of how their high frequency word reading is going. Also, I do a word writing assessment, writing from memory. So take them out into the hall where there is no text on the walls and spread them out, give them a clipboard and a piece of paper and dictate 4 sentences and then give them another 20 minutes to write as many words as they can from memory. And this gives me a good idea of how many known words they are acquiring in writing. Because even though these aren't the word reading assessment and the writing from memory assessment may not be real world PBLA tasks, they are very important literacy tasks and literacy assessments. And so even if you don't count them in your 10 in each skill area, still take them into consideration when you decide whether or not to move student up to the next level or not. Oh, I should show you level 3 students, according to ESL for all. Level 3 literacy students should be reading 600 plus high frequency sight words. So I like to try to get my students to read at least 150 high frequency words. That's level 1 literacy. The ESL for all document doesn't give specific numbers for level 1 and 2 in terms of the number of high frequency words they should be reading, but I try to over prepare my students for level 2 to make sure that they will be successful in level 2. You can do the writing assessment online. I did this with a level 3 literacy student. I showed him how to tilt his laptop camera so that I could see him writing on clean pieces of paper. And I watched him write, and then I watched him take photos of his papers and email them to me. And he did 40 correct words in 15 minutes. I also did book reading assessments with him. I showed him, I shared my screen and showed him the ESL literacy readers, and then observed his writing and recorded his writing accuracy via Zoom. And I used running records to do that. Running records are fantastic. Everybody who teaches literacy, I think, should learn how to take running records. They are a tool for oral reading, an assessment tool for oral reading, and they assess reading accuracy, but more importantly, they document the students' reading behaviors, all of the students' reading behaviors, and then they can be analyzed, all the errors or the self-corrections can be analyzed in terms of the students' use of meaning, structure, and visual information. And then you can do some targeted teaching based on what strategies the student is and is not reading. So the more running records you take, the more familiar you become with taking running records, the more you become aware of noticing how your students are processing text and what strategies they're using for reading and for writing. And it's just fantastic for developing your awareness of how to teach literacy, and you're being able to help your students. Perhaps we can do a future workshop, but it would involve probably a full day. For my session in July, we did Zoom instructions. And so here are a few of the assessments I did for that. The students had to, for the listening assessment, students had to look at the screen, listen to me, follow the instructions, And I gave them each of these instructions in full sentences because I want them to develop an awareness of correct sentence structure. I gave them these instructions in a mixed up order, each twice, and just checked off whether they were able to listen and follow the instructions. For the speaking assessment, they looked at large versions of these images, and they had to give me the full sentence instructions in a different order. So they would look at each of these images on the screen, and I would point to them randomly, and they would have to say, please stop your video, please give a thumbs up, please mute your microphone, please start your video, open the link, please clap, please unmute your video. For the reading assessment, they read 3 of 6 possible emails I had prepared for them and marked them according to how accurately they read, if they understood the email, and if the email sounded good, or if the reading sounded good. I always tell my students, your reading should sound like talking. We don't want the students to develop word by word reading. That doesn't help with comprehension. So for example, if the student was reading this email, I would just check each word that they read correctly, and words that weren't correct, I put an X. Sometimes they self-corrected the word, and that's great. That's not an error then. If they omit a word, I just put a dash. So for example, in this reading, there was 1 self-correction and 2 errors in the total of 29 words. So that was a 93% accuracy rate, which is a good, a successful score of reading at the instructional level. And that, by the way, is not a full running record. That's just a really simplified little running record just to get the accuracy rate. That doesn't, that's not analyzed then for the students' use of meaning, structure, and visual information. And a writing assessment, they had to make a June 2020 calendar, draw the 7 columns and the 6 rows, write the days and the title June 2020, and put all the numbers in the correct boxes. And some students did a great job. This one was almost perfect, except for the man day instead of Monday. And then others exhibited definite fundamental literacy issues. And I was really surprised with this, this result, because this person was in my class for a couple of years, but I always gave my students teacher-made calendars. And so turns out she really did not understand the concept of 7 columns for the 7 days and 7 numbers on each row. So I think when I go back to the classroom, I'm going to get students to draw their own calendars from now on and teach them how to do that. Assessment validity. Well, these are just my own practices. The microphones must be on throughout the assessment. Students must be looking at me, the screen. Students must be alone in the room. Students must respond quickly to prompts. I don't want them having to, or trying to listen to a family member and then repeat back to me. If I hear other voices, then that answer, or perhaps even the entire assessment, becomes invalid. And I compare the writing done on the assessments they sent me, the photos of their writing. I compare those to hard copies of past work that I have here at home, so I can make sure that it's their own handwriting. Okay, so remote teaching and assessment validity. Let's do another breakout session, maybe 5, 7, 8 minutes, in groups of 8 or 10 again, and you guys can share how remote teaching went and any tips you have and any tips about assessing and assessment validity.
Okay, I'm going to break you guys out into rooms now.
Thanks. Oh, ooh, okay. Okay.
Or is it
Um,
12:30 or 12:15, right? 12:15.
okay. Good, good. So I only need a few more minutes. So the resources, just a list of links for listening and reading practice. I only used a couple really. And then the HP5 activities I haven't used, I've just looked at them. But when I get my students on Avenue, I guess I'll be able to use these. Although they are for level 1, 2, sort of a high level 1. But they look like they could be good. Digital readers, videos, there's the Mystery Doug video, and the magnetic letters that I use on little magnetic whiteboards to help my students take words apart and see how words work in terms of initial sound, syllables, and so on. And the calendar, pocket calendar. So there's the links for purchasing those. Marie Clay, the 2 books that we used for the training, the 2-year training on reading and writing intervention program are these 2 here, Literacy Lessons Designed for Individuals and an Observation Survey of Early Literacy Achievement. This is all about the assessment tasks that help you determine what your students can do. And then check out the Reading Recovery Council of North America website, and especially their literacy videos in their video library. So that is it. So the summary, in summary, good readers use meaning, structure, and visual information, or the details of the print, in a balanced way to make sense of print. We must teach literacy students to use meaning, structure, and visual information by using their meaningful personal experiences for writing and then reading, and then also by using pictures with alt text. Using full and correct sentences with our target language in order for students to develop an awareness of correct English sentence structure, or what sounds right. Teaching the relationship between the sounds of spoken English and its written form. And students must acquire a growing bank of high-frequency words that they can easily read and they can write from memory. For assessments, they can be done online, but of course validity and logistics can be an issue. And the following assessments are easy to do and provide important information for teachers and students. So I regularly assess letter sound knowledge, high-frequency word reading, writing from memory, and reading of continuous text. So text with many sentences together in the form of a book or story, an article, an email, a notice, etc. And I use running records to assess reading of continuous text. So keep the meaning, structure, and visual information framework in your mind to help keep students on, to help your students on the path towards literacy. So now questions and also information about useful resources that anybody would like to share. Would be great to get your information. So maybe Elka, if you can tell us about any questions that come up or any
Sure. Let me see.
any tips on good resources.
Just give me a second. I have to scroll up.
No problem.
Why not work together on reading new text?
We want students to be figuring things out on their own. We don't want someone to do the work for them. So when the students are reading a familiar book, a book that they've already tried to read on their own, then sure, I pair them up because I don't have enough copies of all the readers for everybody. But I usually teach all of the vocab and the structures, the language structure for a book, but I don't give them the whole book until after they've mastered all that language independently. And then I give them a book and they try to read it. And then the following day, after reading it only once, the following day, I might do a running record and as an assessment. It's hard to do running records for everybody in your whole class. I might only do, running records for a few people each day. But yeah, you want them to do the work on their own and to develop an independent reading processing system.
All right, Mione was asking if you could go back to this one slide where it shows the MS and V.
Mm-hmm. Okay, screen sharing has stopped. This one, good readers make sense of print by using a balance of meaning, understanding of text from pictures, context, and background knowledge, an awareness of correct English structure or what sounds right, and visual information, the marks on the page, letters, words, spaces, and punctuation.
Looks like the one. I'm not sure if Mione has responded, if that's it. Yeah, he said thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And I guess that'll be in the PowerPoint that you'll receive.
All right, well, thank you everyone for attending. There's no more questions, but just a friendly reminder to please take a moment or two to do the survey at the end. We appreciate your feedback so that we can improve these sessions. This is our first time doing this. So any feedback you have for us would be grateful. Also, you have a chance to win a $25 gift card if you do the survey. So thank you everyone for attending. If you have no more questions, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you, Linda, so much for your time and for your expertise in this area. It's been greatly appreciated.
Thanks, nice to meet everybody. And yeah, please, on the PowerPoint, the last page is my email address. Please send me an email with your ideas and resources and questions. Thanks, Elka.
Thank you, bye everyone.
Thanks, Ken.